welcome to our panel discussion on the highs and lows of community leadership. I believe that community is a really critical part of what we do, and building in, investing in, and growing that community to be more inclusive and learning from the things that we've done and sharing those lessons is really important to me. So today I've invited a couple of guests as panelists. So these are individuals that I feel impact our community in really great ways, and people that continue to inspire me in the work that I do. So I hope that our discussions will empower you to think about where and how you can contribute to the community that we all share. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel. We've had a couple of schedule changes and we are missing a panelist, but hopefully we'll see her in a short bit. So first off, Yan Zhang is a director of development at DrupalCon. She manages a large team of talented Drupal developers, of which I used to be one, and is a member of their executive decision-making team, where she gets to set the strategic direction for the company. On a daily basis, she works with project managers, account managers, developers, to establish and review project timelines and schedules, and oversees a lot of their professional development. In her spare time, she is a really great amateur ballroom dancer. Thanks for joining us. We also have Hussein Abbas, who works as an engineering manager at Accelerant. He started writing computer programs in 1997, back when I was still in elementary school, for school competitions, and just never stopped. That's amazing. He also participates in local developer community meetups for PHP and Drupal, and often speaks, mentors, and contributes at Drupal events, basically does all of the things. And Hussein, I thought this was a great thing I found online about you, but Hussein sees writing code as pure poetry, and if it isn't, he can't get any sleep.
That's a problem I had to overcome, but yeah, it's still true in myself.
And Jofi Moyor has been working with Drupal for 10 years and is a project manager at 1X Internet. Since 2014, she has helped organize many Drupal events in Central Eastern Europe, including Drupal Iron Camp and Drupalathon. And at every conference, her favorite part is the hallway track. She's also never alone in her online meetings. There are always cats that show up at some point and share their butts. And so I'm really looking forward to one of those cats joining us as a panelist today.
I'm going to try my best. Hello.
All right. So I'd like to start by asking a question about leadership in general. So if you could share a moment where you felt that you were in this position where suddenly you had power or leadership, maybe somebody was looking up to you, or maybe somebody wanted to take a photo with you at an event. I've seen this happen to Hussein a lot at DrupalCon. And so what was that moment like for you, and kind of what did it lead to from there? And Yan, hopefully we can kick things off with you.
Okay, hello everybody. My first leadership events in a volunteer organization, I was 20 years ago, show you my age. I was working for the volunteer organization Youth Federation in China, and when I helped organizing over 1,000 people, leadership, young leadership, under 30s, and for that big events, I was taking that position as a volunteer, and I learned so much from all the other leaders, the young leaders, and that inspired me in my career path for last 20 years, always in the leadership role. I think that's thanks for that volunteer event, and contribute to the community, and where I'm here now. I think I'm always try to, on my daily jobs, empower developers, empower project managers, empower designers, and I love work with people. And not just, even though I have a computer science degree background, but I think the people also the most important part I enjoy to work with. Yeah.
It's really great. Hussein?
Thank you, Fatima. So there are two distinct things that come up in my memory. The first one is when I started helping with meetups back in Bangalore. That's my home, and this was around, I think, 7 years back or so. And yeah, we had there were two people who mentored me a lot. Chakri, one of them, and Gokul, I think, and Yeah, so that was my first memory getting into the community, and when I started helping with the meetups, and eventually I started organizing the meetups myself. And it felt weird, being in there, front of a room and everyone staring at you, and I'm supposed to say something now. I'm supposed to begin talking, not responding, which is weird enough, but begin talking. uh, and the second thing, I suppose, is when I started traveling, conferences, speaking at conferences and stuff like that. So the first DrupalCon I attended was in Los Angeles 5 years back, and I had already done a bit of code contribution by that time, and in Drupal core as well. And so my first trip was in Melbourne, and webchick was Angie was keynoting over there, and it was kind of like a serendipitous moment. I was a little late. I walked into the room and I saw my photo on the slides deck, and I was shocked. It was like surreal, and I'm like, she was talking about all the contributors who were present in that event, and then next event was Los Angeles, and everyone was so nice. It's not like a leadership experience, but I definitely felt like what I did was worthwhile, and I was making some difference. Not the same as just typing on a keyboard, writing code, but you know, making an impact some way. It felt awesome.
I have my cat here. She also was not her like lower part, but her face. For me, I think the first time when I felt like something was going on was at DrupalCon in Vienna, I think, when I remember that at that time I was involved in so many things and I was everywhere but behind the scenes, and I had no idea anybody would know who I was or could like at least try to pronounce my name, because it just like didn't feel real. And then I was stopped by people on the corridors, and they started to talk to me. They knew my name and they asked my opinion about stuff and what could they do in their local communities, and it was very surprising. And I remember that we were outside for a break or so, and there were people around me, and I was talking, and they were staring at me, and it was like, is it serious? Like, it's happening? It's what is going on? And it was nice because some of them actually messaged me on Twitter and in email after that, and they were very grateful for my inputs, and I also didn't really feel that it was very significant or important, but I appreciated it. It was really nice to hear.
Yeah, these are all what I'm hearing from all three of you is that it was really about the people. And once you did work, you really saw people recognize you for it, and you saw the impact of the kind of work that you were doing have like a positive impact on people, but also then on yourself. And so I think that's a really great transition to talk about volunteering and people in general. And so Jofi, like bringing it back to you, you've done some work with volunteering. You mentioned at DrupalCon Vienna, but you've also done a lot for Drupal Iron Camp. And so, in your experience, like what are the kinds of things that you can do to put those volunteers together and like help them feel like they're a part of something bigger, which I feel like is a theme that we feel when we work on these events.
So just for the context, Drupal Iron Camp was a camp organized for like Eastern European countries and the communities living in the Eastern European countries, or Central Eastern European, to bring them together and just show to the world what they can do. Because there still is a big difference in hourly rates and stuff like that. So we wanted to show that what the people in Eastern European countries can do is just as good, and they can earn good money because that's the value that they bring, and that we wanted to showcase that. And the idea was born in Amsterdam in 2014, which was my first DrupalCon. And I remember there I was sitting there at my very first community summit, and then suddenly, like 30 minutes in, I already was ahead of a Drupal camp I've never seen before. Nobody ever heard about that before. And we had to put together a team of volunteers coming from different countries. So we were working together with, I think, 7 people. That's, I think, was the time when Slack was relatively new. So we were like trying to communicate there. And of course we had our weekly meetings, but we had to put together something that was non-existent before. So we had to figure out how to get money. We didn't really have the association behind it to finance and stuff like that. And it was really exciting. And for me, it was very inspiring that I had a really good team behind me from all over, not just like these Eastern European countries, but also from other parts of Europe helping out. And we had really good discussions, and we had to cancel the first one. I think I will talk about that a bit later, like the first planned event. And I think that brought us together very well. And it was a really, really good experience. And it showed that if people want to do stuff, they can actually make it happen and bring it together.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, and speaking about people and teams and kind of bringing those people together, you work with a lot of different roles, project managers, account managers, developers. How do you figure out, what the strengths of each person is and how they can work best together on those teams?
Yes, we usually use a strengths finder. That's like a kind of survey, but besides that, the technical point to find the strengths, also you had to work with the person, right? For developers, we have a lot of like internship programs and co-op programs to get to know them before like they even graduate from school. And for project managers, and they usually from coordinators become project managers. We need to get to know them, the personality, their strengths. Their job description can be like, it's not going to fit particular person. So we usually get to know the person first, and then trying to find their niche and then focus on their strengths. A lot of time, the performance review, people focus on improve the weakness, and our organization, we try to build a culture, focus on people's strengths to make sure they, they grow on where they're good at it and excel on that, and make sure have a great company culture. And also when we're hiring people, we also hiring people who are curiosity, talent, also want to be passionate about the technology, especially open source technology, and make sure they have you hire the right people, and then you'll find the right seat for them, and then help them to grow. And also we make sure everybody have a growth path, like planned it. People can change their mind, once you're done developer, be 20 years, you may want to try management, you may want to try to do a different side of the business. Some people like from front want to do UX. We have a lot of professional trainings to make sure people, when they feel like they kind of adapt in this part of Drupal, they want to do other part of Drupal, we make sure there's a coach and mentors helping to get there. Yeah, it's a lot of tactics, like small, but in the center, I think in the end, you had to get to know the person, and then don't limit it by the job description.
Speaking of people who are really passionate about open source and getting to know people, Hussein, that kind of brings me to ask you a question about contribution. I know you're no stranger to being passionate about open source and contributing, and so I know you've been doing that for a really long time. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into contributing? What are the differences between the contribution that you do to Drupal as a community and mentorship? And then I know that you do some internally at Accelerant as well.
Mm-hmm. That's like a loaded question, so I'll try to get to it, get to most of this,
Sorry.
No, that's interesting. I like thinking about this again and again, and I think that's the first part of my answer. I want to keep thinking about this again and again, because the way I started may not be the way people might want to start now. But I think one thing is always a constant, that people, in this industry especially, people always, to stay relevant, we need to keep learning. And that's how I started my journey. I had some free time between projects, and I thought, okay, everyone's talking about Drupal 8, and like, let's see what it is all about. And I want to try it out, but of course it was not usable at that time. So, okay, let me figure it out. Let me go into issue queues, and then, okay, I thought, okay, these are patches, right? Okay, I think I can figure out how to make this patch work. And I started over there. I mean, of course, things are much easier now with merge requests. So that's how I started. And it might seem weird, but like, it didn't really matter, core or contrib or anything. I started out with core, and everyone was very nice. I got a lot of support over there. So Yes, I think that motivation, that the motivation to learn from this, and I think contribution is one of the best ways to learn. You know, one of the things that we should really improve, the documentation for starting with Drupal is, could certainly be better. I mean, it's certainly much better now than it was 7 years back, but back then it was uh, just API documentation, not much else. So contribution was one of the best ways to learn, and I used that, and I, that led me to contribute more, participating in issues, getting that that validation from people. I'm not getting a better word, that okay, what I'm doing matters. And like I said, actually meeting them in person a year or so later, kind of compounded that experience. So yeah, that's one of the ways I begin encouraging my team as well. um, Learning, of course, but learning is a very abstract idea. That's not something that I can convey, that okay, no, learn it this way, when there are several other ways to learn stuff. So I play back with a kind of like a validation structure and an acknowledgement structure, that yeah, you were involved in this stuff, okay, and you work with other people to make this happen, and bring that, kind of make that contribution visible. So we have like an internal thing, like we use Slack. So we have an internal tracking thing. Whenever someone makes a comment on Drupal.org, and now recently on GitHub as well, there is a message popping up in Slack that okay, this contribution, or this patch was submitted, or the status was changed, stuff like that. And I think that drove that encouraged people to keep contributing. And
That reminds me of something we used to do at Echidna that maybe Yan can speak to, where we had like a contribution team as like an incentive for getting our employees to work more with the community in kind of the same way. I don't know, Yan, if you're still working on stuff like that, or like how do you incentivize some of what Hussein is talking about, like making it a positive experience for employees to contribute back?
Yes. So in Digital Kingdom, we have like a team of contributor leaders, and they are actually, like Scott, Martin, Jordan. They always like contribute themselves, but they also we basically build them a team so they can help other developers, especially like new developers to the team, and doesn't even know how to contribute back to Drupal.org. Because there's a lot of like things you had to do to contribute back, and sometimes when new developers don't know where to start. So we have a team of people to helping developers. Once in a while, we are hosting like internal events, and also we have like called Drupal office hours, not the Drupal office hour in the the Drupal used to have. We have our internal Drupal office hours. So we set times, and for developer to book times to with our senior Drupal products lead to make sure they know how to contribute back, or if they have questions, and sometimes they just peer programming and then contribute back together. For some the new PMs, if they're interested, we just say, oh, here are the ways you can contribute back by go through the issue queue. You don't have to be a developer to contribute back. We try to encouraging people. And another thing we do is like we'll select the list of modules we did custom for our clients, but we felt that this could be go back to the community. For example, the date module Martin did is basically what we try to solve our own problems, and all this, we don't have that in Drupal.org. How are we going to contribute back? So we'll gather our team and together and make sure that they have time scheduled. I think the key is, as any agencies, you have like billable works, right? You have client works. To make sure they don't compete priority, we always schedule like a project. If they have a module want to contribute back, we schedule the time, forecast time for them. So they're not only using, I know sometimes the developer get passion, they're using a lot of their own times after work, but we also carved out a little bit of time at work as well to make consistent, so they can track in the time sheet. This is the Drupal completion hours, and we make sure encouraging, and that's a part of like their encouragement program for mentor program as well. And so in order to be a tech lead, you need at least mentor somebody at the company. So all those initiatives helping to give that time to developers to contribute back.
I want to take a moment to welcome our fourth panelist, who is finally able to get on the call with us. Taryn, so glad to have you here with us. Taryn is a project lead and front-end developer in Lullabot's support and maintenance department, but was also for 4 years the lead of the Dallas, Texas chapter of Black Girls Code, and was featured on the topic of empowering volunteers on the Drupal Easy podcast recently. She's also now the careers lead for the Drupal Diversity and Inclusion Initiative and a member of the Dallas County leadership team for the Texas Organizing Project. I was really excited to have Taryn here for the conversation that we were just talking about how you can recruit people, but also like retain them to feel passionate about the kind of work they're doing, and as a leader kind of build that passion. And I heard Taryn talking on a podcast just yesterday about there's a concept of activation, empowerment, and recognition, and kind of using that together to make that like contribution happen. So Taryn, maybe you can share a little bit about that with us.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me. Good morning. Had a client meeting that got scheduled at the same time as this meeting, so that's the issue of wearing many hats. What I was talking about on there with activation, empowerment, and recognition, it was something that I kind of started to do organically while I was working with Black Girls Code as a volunteer. But I think that these are three patterns that we can use when we have people, whether it is people that are volunteers or if they're employees, as far as getting people to be able to contribute their max potential to a mission. I think that as organizers, sometimes we can get caught up in what our mission is and what we want to accomplish, but one of the best ways to gain and keep volunteers is to understand what it is that they would like to do within your mission, how they would like to serve. We had 2 volunteers that ended up being in our curriculum lead for Black Girls Code. And one of them was a student of computer science at a major university here. And the other one was a teacher who just led all the STEM curriculum. So by reaching out to them and being like, hey, I see that you've been contributing in this capacity. Would you be able to help us with this initiative that we have? And I think the most important part for me, being upfront and realistic about what time expectations you have for those people, checking to see where their boundaries of being able to contribute is essential. I think that there are a lot of people that want to give back, but they just don't know how. And sometimes all they need is someone to reach out to them and ask and let them know exactly how it is that they can help and to get their ideas. That goes to the empowerment step, giving them an actual set of tasks that they can do. And a lot of people, when you do that, some people will just do what it is that you've asked them to do. And other people will have ideas and feel like, this is where I can do more. What do you think of this idea? And then finally, recognition. We celebrated the crap out of all of our members.
Yeah, we were just talking about earlier where everyone here felt best when they were recognized for the work that they were doing in a way that felt really good.
Yeah, I think that, it's important to recognize the work that they do within your organization, but even outside of the organization. When our volunteer, Brittany, the Master's of Computer Science person, she was graduating, we actually surprised her at the end of one of our workshops and announced it to all the parents and the students and everyone. And just to have it understood that we saw her contributions to our organization as part of who she was as a whole person, that's very meaningful for volunteers.
Talking about volunteers and the recognition makes me think a lot about like it's great to have people who are really passionate and driven. And myself, like there were a lot of moments where I was really excited about something and I worked really hard, but I would always reach a point where, something would happen in the real life or, I just couldn't contribute at the same level anymore. And so one of the things that I heard from the panelists as I was putting some of these questions together was that everyone kind of resonated with this idea of burnout. And, as community leaders, you're kind of accountable for a lot of things. And, we're not going to be able to cover the breadth of the responsibility that being a leader in kind of a digital online community looks like. But, something to talk about is, how you navigate that burnout, how you can, delegate work to other people, or, create frameworks in which you're able to step down and someone else can step up. And maybe, Jofi, you can start us talking about this really important topic.
Sure. So I am the kind of person who is, for me, it's hard to delegate at some point. And if I see that someone, or there's no one to do some things, like, for example, organizing events or other smaller stuff, then I just like go and do it. And 2 years ago, I think there was more than 2 years ago now, of course. Yeah. There was a point when I didn't want to organize anything anymore. There was a year before that I had two international events at the same year. And as many people know, organizing an event, especially a bigger one, is not just like 1 month of work, but usually it's much bigger, even if it's only a virtual event. But of course, I know it's a lot of work to put together virtual events as well. And those were in-person events, and I just got tired, and very tired. And the moment when I felt that I don't enjoy doing it, not like before, but there was a point when I didn't enjoy it at all, and I didn't wake up in the morning like, oh, I'm going to get something done today, awesome. I felt that I need to stop. And then I actually said that, okay, there were two conferences like this. One was in Hungary, but there I think that the whole team got tired. The other one was the second edition of Iron Camp, which we organized the first one in Prague, and we wanted to do a second one. And there was a point when I had to say, no, I cannot do this. And I'm happy to give it to someone else if you want to run it, but I cannot do it because I want to be happy with what I'm doing. And I don't want to go to bed every day with like the thinking in my mind that I have to take care of something again. And I think it's important to understand that there is a point, and you have to understand that it's okay to feel bad, and it's okay to say, no, I'm not able to do this. Because I also think that being mentally healthy is more important than spending countless hours and in like doing something that maybe is not going to make you happy. But yeah, first of all, you should come first all the time. For me, that helped. I took 2 years of break, and now I'm doing less things, but I understand more what's the point and where can I say no, and when it's fine to say no. And it's working so far. Apparently it was like working before, but I never did that. And then I just did a hard stop, and I had to reboot, and it's working much better now. But it's a big job, I think, for everyone involved actively in community stuff.
I wanted to give a chance to anyone else who wants to add on to the burnout conversation. I know Hussein or Yan. Yan, let's go with you.
I think at the burnout, I try to help because we have a lot of developers and they like to contribute, and I try to help them to make sure they don't burn out. So we put some products like sometimes contribute the code. At some point in your life, it just can't do that, don't have the time. But I say, how about you coaching other people, spend like less time on you contribute the code yourself, but how about train somebody and spend an hour a week and doing certain time on your calendar. So try to helping other people make sure they don't burn out, and then lay out what could look like, and also make sure people are still passionate about the thing. If they don't passionate about the project, it's no longer, it doesn't matter how awesome it is for other people, but it themselves just don't have the drive to doing it. So make sure it's still fun, and it's not events. Also padding the time a little bit more, because I already have a life. I find with schedule my own, also on a lot of like university like advisory boards. A lot of time, I would like to be there all the time to make sure the curriculum for the programs running right. So sometimes like if I can't do it, and I would refer to other people like younger leaders, and that so instead just won't say no, feel bad. I was like, oh, someone else actually really passionate about this. How about, this person go to contribute back instead? And usually like, work out. And I think it's just that don't carry everything on your own shoulder, because we are like, there's big community, or you have big team. There's also always young people looking for opportunities. Sometimes it's good to delegating. I find now all my job is I don't code anymore. I just delegating and then build all the new managers and then make sure they can coach people. And I think that's going to help. And then you feel different, right? Like helping Fatima to succeed, that's making me even more happier than myself to succeed. So I think that just to, find a different passion. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I hear you saying now and that I experienced when you were my manager was really that coaching process and helping me figure out, I want to give 10 hours a week, and then, checking in with me and being like, hey, Fatima, I know you're tired and I know that it's been stressful. Like, does this still feel good? And that's something that I think Taryn can really speak to, like checking in on those commitments and seeing if your volunteers are still able to contribute in that way, because sometimes we get so passionate, we're so in it, we just can't see that. And managers and leaders can kind of tap into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it tunes in with the burnout conversation that we were just having, right? I know for me, when I reached the point of burnout, I didn't recognize that I had gotten there until I heard a talk by April Sides on burnout and recognizing the signs of it. And it was like, oh, that's me. And I try to make sure to check in on everyone else. I think that those two tie in together because as people that are leading volunteers or employees, we need to be able to say, hey, I see that you've gotten this thing done, and I understand that you want to go over and above and beyond on this, but here's the commitment that you made to us. You've so I always think about it in terms of when I tell my volunteers, I just need 5 hours to get this done. Here's the 5 hours that you did. We're going to check in and see how you're doing. How is the rest of your life? And then have the conversation from there. It helps in two ways. It helps us to remind ourselves of what the boundaries are that we ask for, and it helps remind volunteers and employees what their stated boundaries are. I think especially within capitalist frameworks, everyone thinks that they need to maximize on all of their output, but in part of that, as a part of that, we also have to have periods of rest. Like you can't just be like chopping away. There has to be time for like sharpening the axe or even letting the muscles rest. And I see Hussein.
Yeah, all yours, Hussein.
Yeah, so I was just about to actually talk about recognizing burnout, but Taryn just brought that up. So I'm curious. This is a problem that I face. So now, in me personally, I faced burnout early in my career, right? And now whenever I'm approaching that, I recognize it. But I still think it's the hardest problem for everybody, and it's harder to spot it from outside. So in a distributed environment, any thoughts, like, a Drupal community, I could say that we are distributed in a way. We don't actually see the other person. We just talk to them over issue queues and sometimes calls. What are some of the signs that you can look out for, that, okay, someone is approaching burnout, or, and they don't realize it probably?
I can answer that. I think that especially in a remote environment, making sure that you've established, built, and maintained a relationship with people, even if it's, once a month, circling up with somebody 15 minutes, hey, how are you doing? How's life going? That way you get used to what people's norms are and what is out of the norm for them. I think a part of that too is establishing an environment of psychological safety,
Yes.
wherein the person feels like they can admit that something is going on with them, right? I'm only recently in my career getting out of where I've been established as a junior developer, but in the point where I was junior developer, I did not want to admit that anything was wrong with me ever, that I didn't know something ever, and fostering that relationship with people, especially remotely when we don't see a person day to day, is going to be helpful in being able to recognize the signs that something might be going on with someone.
That seems oddly familiar. Yeah, and one-on-ones, I agree on that strongly. I'm very particular about one-on-ones, and we have to have them as manager myself. That's one of the first things I do. Thanks Terry.
Thanks, Hussein, for being a moderator.
I was just
Any other
curious
questions?
about
Suddenly this is a discussion and I love it. I want to give anyone else a chance to add on to that conversation. If not, we did have a...
Yeah,
Go
so
for
I
it.
can
Yeah.
add a little bit regarding the remote, because recently we have 150 company and all remote, and my team's so huge. I sometimes felt like I lost the touch. I no longer there's no more hallway coffee chat, and or seeing somebody how they feel, so just by look at them. So yeah, I think I feel like that's why we personally schedule more online events, like fun events. We just did recently, like with our team, did a carve the pumpkin, or building like gingerbread house. And sometimes like because when I do check-in, it's feel like that you're the managers, and they may feel a bit like too formal. So we do a lot of events to make sure like that people actually participate in the events, and to get other people to just give them the social life as well, like because it's hard for a lot of people staying home. I think like that's also good for people mental health wise. If you see your team face, not just your managers or the people on your project, also see the rest of the company, and having some like virtual events, like smaller teams, and more like virtual lunches. We hang out for lunch together, or chat about recent hobbies or games, and or book clubs, and those helping a little bit. I thought with that, getting closer to, and then people open up a little more during those casual events. So yeah, that's something I want to add to.
I just had some thoughts because I'm like, we are now from all over the world in this panel, and it's nice. And this year has been hard for everyone, I guess. And I think that in 2020, so I'm working remotely full time. And I think I spent a lot more time in front of my screen than I usually do. And not because of like lockdowns in Hungary, we were pretty lucky with that, but it's like, the whole world is energized in a way that like we have to do a lot of things. We have to take care of a lot of things. And what I found really useful, and I also need it much more than I used to need it before, is to spend a lot of time away from the screen. So when I try to turn off my head, and I want to avoid burning out, and burning out, it's in general, well, burning out from 2020, but like not spending time in front of the screen. Like, I don't know, I learned how to play poker this year. I went to like start taking driving lessons. I like went to places that are not in front of a laptop, and not watching, I don't know, binge watching TV shows or stuff like that. Because I think this year has been very hard in that sense, and it's really hard to say, like, I sit down in front of the computer at 9 in the morning, and then I stand up at 6, but oh, I can do more because it's just 6. I feel like I haven't done that much, and then it's like suddenly, I don't know, 8 in the evening, or 9, or even more. And I think it's really important to try to spend some time outside of the laptop and just turn off your brains, and just think and just do nothing. And then if you go back to contribution, or any kind of contribution or work that way, I think it feels much better.
I think in light of 2020 and that kind of discussion about having to step away from our screens and balance, those of us, myself included, that did not have a good work-life balance are definitely struggling right now, because I never really taught myself how to leave the computer at 8 p.m. And now that the computer and my bed are in the same room, like, that just never happens. And so one of the questions that I had that I kind of wanted to wrap this up on, that I think was, what are some things we can do better as community leaders, or past community leaders, for some of us who've been taking a break, to raise up some of the people who are aspiring to be leaders. But I think there's some value in taking that question from the reference of, given this year and the things that we've learned and are still learning about how we're working and taking breaks, and that socializing between our employees is important. Like spending an hour to have lunch together sounds like a really great thing that a team should do to kind of build that safety. And so I guess that question of, what can we do for some of those aspiring leaders, given what we've learned, and given 2020 and how we've learned that empathy is really important. And it sounds like Taryn, you can kick us off with the last question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think as far as raising up leaders, one thing that really helped for me at Lullabot is that we have a document that explains like what are the different roles that somebody can have on a project, right? And seeing that seeing what a project lead was responsible for, and I was able to be like, oh, I've done these things. I would like to do this, and giving people the opportunity to do that. I know for me, like it felt nice to feel empowered instead of like doing empowering of others. So that's something that I'd like to keep in my work. And as far as supporting aspiring leaders, I think it's the things that Jan mentioned, as far as recognizing the humanity of people, whether it's, having games nights, letting people have a space to be them, to explore the books that they love, the games that they love, and honoring that as much as a part. I feel like that reminds that person to think of their own humanity too, not just their leadership.
Yan, do you want to share something?
Yeah. So for the new leaders, I think it's don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. If you don't, in your career path or being a leader, if you're afraid to make mistakes, you're not going to move forward. It's okay to make mistakes and learn from them and be honest and then apologize for your mistakes and learn from the team and moving on. Another thing is what I usually does is, if you want to train new leaders in your company or your community, another thing you can do is you can for anybody who interested in leadership team, for last year we do Drupal trainings in universities, but we also start internally. We do called the leadership trainings, which I will just offer like teaching tricks and tips and be a leader. Even though for developer who haven't thought about leader yet, they can come in, just listen to what look like, so they may consider in the future, right? So sometimes you need to find the leadership skills into the people you are grow, because sometimes people may not confident they can be a leader until you show them what they look like and they build their confidence that, oh, actually I can do that too. I think inspired leader is sometimes it's just more like helping others find the leadership within them.
Yeah, I remember that moment at the end of the interview I had with Echidna, and that must have been like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yan said to me, she was like, I see what you can be in 2 years. Like, I see that path for you. And I went home and my dad was like, why this company? And I was like, she sees the path. Like, clearly no one had said to me, like, I see where you can go. And that meant so much to me that I moved to another country. And so, yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Yan. Hussein, do you want to share some advice?
Well, that's a big word. So I'll just share my thoughts rather. I would like to add on to Yan, about mistakes. I think that's one of the critical things I would do. I would just add on that, mm, like, feel free to share them publicly, and I think that's important because it tells everybody that we are all, we are in this all together. We are not separate, and what I'm doing you can do too, because I think uh, with leadership and with anything else, nothing beats demonstration, nothing beats an example, and sending that message that I am learning just the same as you, and I would want you to learn through the mistakes that I made, and build on top of that.
Definitely a lot of mistakes were made this year that I will reflect on in the next coming weeks. And, as I'm thinking about like I've taken a break now, what is it that I can do and want to do? That's definitely something that I'm thinking about. Sophie?
Yeah, I absolutely resonate with this message that like, just try. And then if you make mistakes, then you can learn from it. So if you don't try, you will never know how it could work out. I think I remember when the first big event, or the first event that I ever organized was Drupal Dev Days in Szeged. And when I said yes to it, I literally had no idea how Gábor Hojci looks like. And I remember that I was like standing next to him at DrupalCon, Hungarian event. And I was like, hi, I'm Zsófi. Hi, I'm Gábor. And I had no idea who he was. And I said yes to helping out organizing Dev Days. And I made mistakes. I did my first baby steps there, but then I learned a lot. And I am very happy that I did it. And I was brave enough to try, because I would have missed a lot of fun things. And I think that's how you can grow the best. Just try.
That's a really beautiful note to end our session on. I just want to say thank you so very much for saving me from burnout by joining me and turning this into a panel discussion. We're out of time, but this has been such an honor and pleasure to have you all here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Nice
for
to
doing
meet
this, Fatima.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.